Welcome to the lively, unrehearsed conversation we call Moral Side of the News. We're glad you're alongside this weekend. I'm John Blim with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and with me is a distinguished panel, Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ and Molo Village CDC, Reverend David Harkleroad, South Point Church, New Albany, Rabbi Stan Miles, Louisville Melton School, and Father John Stoltz, St. Aloysius Catholic Church. Our first topic panel is former President Trump. He was back in the news this week, charged with a criminal scheme aimed at keeping him in the White House after losing the presidential election in 2020. Trump calls the new charges a pile-on as he continues his 2024 re-election bid. Panel, it seems the former president still has a loyal following in the polls, so let's hear your thoughts.
He's exhausting. That's all I can say. I mean, he just sucks up all of the oxygen. And we are not talking about the real issues that are affecting this country as a result of him. And I don't know where this is going to lead. I wish it would lead to him being not only indicted, but also ending up in jail. That would be my personal choice. But I don't believe that it will happen. And I think it will cause more chaos and division within this country.
Jamesetta, I am so glad that you started out. You set a tone. I'm so tired of seeing this country be ripped apart by factionalism. I'm so tired of people stirring the pot over and over and over again. And the conversation that some people are above the law, some people, but most of us are not. I remember a trip I made to Israel about, maybe 15, 16 years ago for a meeting. And one of the featured speakers at the meeting was a person who was the Prime Minister of Israel. Gave a speech, and very soon after the speech, that prime minister was no longer prime minister, and he was in prison for corruption and bribery. He broke the law, and he had to pay for it. That's what democracies do. And if anyone who is tried and convicted by a jury of their peers must serve the time. But we've just been torn apart. And how much longer will this go? And here in Kentucky, yesterday was Fancy Farm, which is the ultimate political pile-on. There's a lot of heat at the Fancy Farm picnic, and I've been watching it for years. I've seen heat all together, but very little light from either side of the aisle. And I'm tired of that. I want to see light. I want to see people getting together to solve problems. That's what we need to do.
Stan, I agree with that last comment particularly. I have a lot of opinions. I have a lot of political opinions about what's going on here. But I was really trying to focus on what is the moral side of this news. We have an integrity problem in our politics, and that is a two-sided issue. This question we're discussing right now, these Trump indictments, there is a massive integrity problem on both sides of this. Donald Trump, what has occurred there, things are coming to light, but the politicization of this, the decisions being made, and I think there's a lack of trust in general from our public of our politicians and this process, there's a reason that this is not black and white. It's because our politicians on both sides have lost a lot of trust. And so I think the verdict is out personally. I am open to seeing the evidence. One of the commentators I like to listen to, I really liked what he said. The DOJ has a serious burden of proof now. Now that they've brought these charges, they need to prove pretty convincingly what they are saying and charging him with. And I'm open to seeing that, but I don't have a lot of trust. And I think I probably would say I speak for others who feel similarly about that. So again, I think there's a real integrity problem in our politics.
My own thoughts are that former President Trump is now Citizen Trump. He is Citizen Trump who has been indicted on criminal charges for the third time. He has some civil charges against him. I'm not going to count them right now. But for the third time, a grand jury has said that there's enough evidence to arraign him and bring him to trial. And my thoughts on that are that the politics needs to be kept out, and that the public needs to pay attention to our judicial process and let that work in an intellectual search of the facts. Along with that, we have a heritage in our Constitution and in our own belief system that someone is innocent until proven guilty. He has not yet been proven guilty. The evidence, though, has been made public because he has been a presidential leader as well as a political figure. There is quite a bit of comment in the political field. In my opinion, that it is certainly not suppressed because we have the ability to express ourselves and with that sense of freedom. But we do need to hear and just say, recognize this is a citizen who has been charged with a crime, and we need to, and actually several crimes and on 3 different times. And there's possibly upcoming a 4th one as well, it seems. And I think that we just need to keep the politics out of this situation and look at this as a citizen who has been accused of breaking the law, and then let the courts look at this. And so the judgment of guilt then is not a political judgment. It shouldn't be. Hopefully, the jury can separate itself that way, and that the judgments, should he be found guilty of a crime, should he be found innocent of the charges, not guilty of the charges, that's based on a factual sense, and it's just based there. So, and I'm hoping that we can adjust our minds to that, so that if he is found not guilty, that we can settle and say, okay, there simply wasn't enough evidence that the accused attorneys did a good enough job in defending him. Or if he's accused and found guilty, then we say there was enough evidence. The prosecutors did a good job. That the defense could not defend him adequately. Something like that, in the sense that the jurors found enough factual evidence to make a conviction, and rest our judgments upon the work of the courtroom, and to go there. I think that would be best for the nation. So I'm hoping that happens. It's hard to, in other ways, it's hard to keep the politics out of it, and I recognize that. It's hard to, because of who he is, it's hard for the media not to pay attention to it and for people not to comment on it.
David,
I've got a question that's a rhetorical. I'm sorry, Josette, please go.
No, I just wanted to ask David a question, because I agree it's an integrity issue with our politicians. And so what is the solution? I mean, I know we vote people in and out supposedly, but what is the way to make sure that we are actually getting politicians now that have that integrity that we are seeking? Because it seems like the that the way things are now, the meaner spirited you are, the more unscrupulous you are, then you're the person that is going to win. And so how do we change that culture so that we begin to have politicians with integrity again? To say, yeah, you vote them in, you vote them out, that doesn't seem to be the answer any longer. So what do we do next in order to ensure that?
That is a great question. I don't presume to have the answer to that. I think the integrity issue is there. And I think it's a bipartisan issue. I think it is a big problem in our politics. And I don't know the solution. I think you're right. Merely voting is not enough accountability. We have to find better methods of accountability. But I think in one sense, the leaders we choose are a representation of what we want, of what we're putting forward. They're fashioning themselves in ways that they think will get them voted in. And so I think at minimum, a grassroots effort of being kinder to one another, being more honorable, having more integrity. If these characteristics are growing in our churches, we're clergy, or in our, with our members, and that's growing in our society, I would hope that in time that would become what people see the citizens of this country want, that we want integrity, we want kindness. So I don't know that that's a simple solution, but maybe one thing we at least have an ability to have an effect on.
Okay.
We have had in our history leaders who do have integrity. A lot of them, they remain unsung heroes, I think. And they're good and they have talent. I think part of the culture issue, by the way, I agree with you all in these. I agree with these questions, is to fashion a public that actually looks for that, David. I think you're exactly right. It looks for the people that we vote for, that they have an honesty and an integrity, a sense of service to the public, and also a sense of talent, so that it's the people that we elect. They read the law. If they're a legislature, they do reading. They are willing to. I think a sense of willingness to dialogue with an opposite position, just for the sense of learning. I think there's a sense of a peaceful person who wants that, someone who wants the best of the nation. I think we need to form a culture that actually wants those good values among legislators. I think you're right. And we kind of get who we, sometimes on the lower end of our culture, sometimes, not always. I do think we've had leaders who've had great integrity and have offered great service to our country. Go ahead. I hope I didn't interrupt anyone.
I don't think so.
I think we.
Stan, go ahead, Stan.
But the depoliticizing in this day and age, I think that this is wishful thinking, because it seems to me that whenever something comes through the news about one of these indictments, the next thing that you know, President Trump is doing another one of his rallies, and his rallies are different than any campaign rallies I've ever seen in this country. You're not talking about a vision for the country. You're talking about it's just the language and the tenor just, it is totally uncivil. I haven't heard really what the goals of a proposed second Trump administration are. I don't have a clue, but I know who he likes and I know who he really doesn't like, over and over and over and over again.
Okay, panel, that's a good start with our first topic here on Moral Side of the News, a second topic on this program. About halfway through our program right now. COVID-19 is blamed for more than 3 million deaths. And while we were locked down and at home, we turned to our screens, that is, to shop and be entertained. And the effects of that are still being felt. This week, the Louisville Ballet revealed that it's in deep financial peril after paying its dancers while being shut down. And the ballet is pleading for the community to save it. Panelists, we know so many businesses closed. What does this region lose if we lose the arts and the arts disappear?
For me, cultural arts is it helped me to have an appreciation of just various events in the community, but just it helped me to dream. And ballet was one of those things. And my mother was a school teacher, and as a result of that, she made sure that we attended the symphony, the ballet, and all of those different things. And, that's just another piece that if we don't have, there are so many children that will never have an opportunity to see that here in Louisville, see that type of dance in Louisville, and it limits the possibilities for our children if they can't see that. And so I would hope that there is some way that we will be able to raise the money needed in order for that beautiful dance to continue on in this community.
I know
I think
that
arts are the soul of the community.
Yes.
I think arts are the soul of the community. I read earlier this week that the ballet said that they can't afford to have the Louisville Orchestra playing the performances of the Nutcracker that they have in years past. And these are things that make us Louisville. I'm wondering, we have organizations in place so that this won't happen, notably the Fund for the Arts. I wonder where the Fund for the Arts is in this dialogue. We need to, once again, going from our first topic to our second topic, what's the solution? We have a problem. How do we solve it? We solve the problem by coming together. We don't solve the problem by striking out on our own. We don't solve the problem by fracturing ourselves, being apart from one another. We must be a part of one another, not apart from one another.
I think it's really important for us to have a ballet and community-sponsored art, like the ballet, Louisville Orchestra, opera. Those kinds of things. I think when you see the work of an artist whose creativity and their impulse, and you witness them, and you could say, look what that person can do, and it is inspiring. It is great to see that kind of creativity come out of a person. I think when you have community-sponsored arts, a question you can say is, or a statement you can make is, look what we can do. And that, I think the arts are good for human beings, because they introduce us to human capacity, or the human way to create, to be creative. I think of that as being good for human beings. It's good for business. It's good for community. It's good all the way around for us to have that, and to give that expense to those kinds of expressions of humanity. And I have hope. I know some years ago, it's been a decade or so, the Louisville Orchestra was also in a tough spot. They did some reframing, some retooling, and now they are in a very good position. I know this past year, I was able to see Yo-Yo Ma with the Louisville Orchestra, and it seems to me that they have done a complete turnaround in terms of what they do for the community and their sense of success and how they're doing. I have the very same hopes for the ballet, and with the hope that there will be a turnaround for them. And my hope is also for the community, that we need the ballet, so we need to support them and the artistic endeavor that they do. And so some work along that for their support in that would be really good for us.
Well, I agree, panel, with all of you. Just the arts are so important. I would love to see the ballet get this funding. Maybe even we have some citizens that are able to help make that happen in different ways. But just to pivot a little bit, we started the discussion that this shortfall really became an issue because of our response to COVID. And my goal is not to make this a really political point, but the Courier Journal article I read on this, the author said that this was a result of the cancel everything. And they put that in quotes. She said the cancel everything response to COVID. And I think in hindsight, looking back at COVID, I'd like us to see us have more, not this panel, I mean our society, have some open and bipartisan discussions about how we reacted to COVID. There is a tension between safety and wise decisions, but also freedoms and economic goods. And I personally think we overreacted. I have not heard many proponents of the cancel everything come back and acknowledge that we overreacted. And I think that's a discussion we need to have, because important things like the arts have been severely damaged. A lot of people went out of businesses. People's personal economics were crushed. Not suggesting we shouldn't have done anything, but did we overreact? And I'd like to see a healthier discussion about that when we look at these kind of issues.
Okay, panel, we've got a third topic I'd like to get onto, and it's a completely different twist. A completely different twist. Up next, do you believe there is life out there in space? Retired Air Force Major David Grush recently testified that the U.S. has concealed what he called a multi-decade program to collect UFOs and has recovered non-human biologics. Panel, a Pentagon spokesperson denied these claims. What do you think? 5 minutes left.
I think that there's got to be some other life in the cosmos other than just us. And I don't know what it is, but I hope I live to discover with the rest of humankind what it is. And I hope that it is a type of life that we can have a positive relationship.
Our church is just starting a series in the book of Revelation, and it tells us about all sorts of fantastic beings living in the greater universe. So I believe there are spiritual beings out there, absolutely. As far as our contact with them and what all that entails will, I guess, unfold in time as some of this continues to come to light.
Well, I too agree that, I find it hard to believe that God just created us and did not create other creatures. And so while I think for me, it's hard to think in terms of UFOs or whatever they're called now. But I imagine that they do exist. It's just going to be a matter of how we're able to communicate with them so that we can learn from each other, I imagine.
Considering how large the universe is, then I would think that by mathematics or something, we could say that life outside of Earth is possible. And I guess some mathematicians would say probable. And then looking at God's own from a theological perspective, considering God's own creative power and his mystery, that would say that life outside of our Earth is also possible, because with God all things are possible. And so I think of that too. we're encountering a story like this, that there's a whistleblower and the Pentagon keeping secrets and a whistleblower trying to reveal them. And then speaking of that, without much evidence, I don't really know what to think without more evidence. I keep thinking about these possibilities and then rooms from what is fact and where does my mind take this to science fiction? I'm just not really sure. And so I don't know where this is. It's like it's entertaining to read, but I'm not quite sure what the facts are, because where we have our allegations, someone making allegations in a whistleblower context, and then an institution making denials that also keep secrets. And what's that all about? And so I think it's hard for me to make a judgment there with all of that possible. And to think, and sometimes then I resort back to some of where I think I feel comfortable with some guesses of facts, such as that it would be very probable for the armed forces, like the Air Force, to say that in space around where planes fly in that, they're going to see something, and whatever it is, it's not yet identified because of the limitations of human perception, limitation of radar. And then somehow that leads to a sense that right now that is not identified as an object. And that somehow then there needs to be research and say, what exactly was that? So we can determine, is that something that hurts our national security or something like that? Is it something dangerous? Is it something not necessarily that it would be something extraterritorial, And so my mind sometimes goes to that area, which feels a little bit more comfortable than, say, something biological coming from the universe to us, and then we're keeping it in a secret.
John, we've already talked about the fact we have enough political problems here on Earth. We don't need intergalactic political problems to add to it. So let's hope it's a while.
Excellent way to end our program.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Excellent way to end our program, Moral Side of the News this week. My thanks to Jamesetta, Ferguson, David Harkleroad, Stan Miles, and John Stoltz. You can catch this program again on YouTube anytime. And until next week, we'll have an all-new conversation. Thank you, panel. As it's back to school time, it's a great time to consider a donation to the WHAS Crusade for Children. Just go to WHAScrusade.org. That's WHAScrusade.org, and see all the many ways you can make a difference. Plus, you can always mail your donation to 520 West Chestnut Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. That's 520 West Chestnut Street, Louisville, Kentucky, 40202. Thanks for changing a child's life with a donation to the WHAS Crusade for Children. Join us again next week as the conversations continue here on Moral Side of the News.